Welcome back to Shades of Green radio show, simulcast on KDWN 720 AM and KDWN 101.5 FM in Las Vegas. Our show is produced by Green Alliance of Nevada, sponsored by MV Energy, and I'm your host, Stan Hannell, filling in for Paul Ira. If any listeners have questions for our guest speakers today, the phone number is 702-257-5396. That's 702-257-5396. We're talking today with Professor Marcus Burley from the Desert Research Institute and from Elspeth DiMarzio from the Sierra Club about the Solar Nexus project, a 5-year program that's wrapping up. It began in 2013 and involved all 3 higher education facilities, University of Nevada, Reno, University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and the Desert Research Institute, both north and south. Basically, it employed 48 faculty, 14 technicians, and 30 PhD level and master's level students to work on the nexus, the connections of solar power installations in our state, as well as its effects on water resources and environmental resources as well. But what was interesting is the results of these 5 years have also helped bring practical programs that hopefully are good for our economy as well. And you spent a lot of time, Dr. Burley, with that. Can you talk more about how you interacted with local industry through your research?
Thank you, Stan. So the goal really was to first of all reach out to industry and find out what's their cutting edge need. I mean, how can we help them in order to improve, for example, solar energy production, solar cell development, whatnot. I mentioned already, I think, dry cooling technologies, solar energy to electricity conversion, and whatnot. And so
that's makes the solar cells more efficient to actually create more electricity for a given area.
Right. But also an important part always is if you think about solar thermal electricity production, you, for example, also need cooling in order to produce electricity. That's true. So getting away from using water to cool and go towards air to cool, especially in dry environments, that's a very important point. And so in this process of starting to interact with industry, we learned about some of their concerns or what they are interested in. And so, for example, with respect to the environmental component, we've learned that industry would like to move away from grading and blading and more towards minimal disturbance when they develop their big solar plants.
So instead of just flattening the earth, let's leave the earth in place and try and build on top of it and around it, I guess.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
And so what we are talking about today is really trying to find out what really happens if you go in with a solar plant with minimum amount of disturbance, and what happens to the plants, what happens to the animals, what happens to the environment. There's this notion out there that you might even create like a little island or like a little ecosystem out in the desert because you're fencing off certain areas, or certain animals are gonna be protected inside of the fence. We looked at how for example, the water distribution inside of the solar facility is going to change, because you can see these solar panels, these structures like umbrellas. So they basically redistribute the rainwater. So you will have areas that are wetter, areas that are drier. Different vegetation will move in, and so it's quite fascinating to see how these things work, and especially on a large scale. If you think about a square mile of solar panels, that has an impact.
Wow, you could have a little rainforest in the desert area.
Kind of.
That's great. That's fantastic. Also, we talk about economic diversification. One of the goals of our state after we came through the last recession is to try and create newer industries and new jobs that go beyond our gaming industry. That's our primary driver out here. What kind of new industries are you seeing coming out of your research?
Well, it's maybe not just the industry itself, but at least what we can do with the project now is to basically set the stage and can say, well, you can actually have the research done inside of the state. You can have the workforce that will be needed in order to attract this sort of industry. And so I think we're not there yet, but I think we kind of set the stage now for becoming more attractive for high tech, for example, to come to Nevada.
And that's interesting. You worked with the governor's Office of Workforce Innovation. It's also acronym OWIN, I think it's, and they'll be partnering on this event as well on October 9th. So that was really great to hear. What's interesting is you were talking about attracting folks from outside the state. So it's not just within the state that creating industry, but I think Jennifer was telling me about the Canadian exports and imports, that basically there might be interest from a trade group to come through and see what kind of trade is possible between our state and in Canada as well.
Yes, so that was part of this outreach component. Throughout the project, we reached out to industry and other entities, not just within the United States, but globally. So we have contacts to Australia, Europe, other parts of Asia, and it's really just about finding out, I mean, what do other teams do, what do other groups do, and what are our needs also, say, for example, from the solar industry in different countries. I mean, there are different efforts we know about that are going on. For example, in Australia, they have very similar environmental conditions like we have here in Nevada. So we basically learn from each other, and just it's just an interesting interaction too, to see what others or other people are facing, and it's a fascinating topic.
And you write detailed studies and research papers that go around the world, I guess, in this type of thing. So
that's true. I mean, research on that level is very international. So it's really kind of, you share what you find, and you learn from others, and then hopefully you'll be able to break it down to your local problem. So, because that's specifically what we're trying to look at, and maybe somebody else already figured it out, and then
as in Australia,
you bring it on board. And absolutely.
Wonderful, thank you. That's great. Elspeth, we were talking about Nevada's goals for carbon reduction, but also leading the West in exploring clean energy and how clean energy helps diversify our economy. Can you talk a little bit more about that as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think that clean energy can be, in a state where we have, a lot of people think of us as just kind of one with casinos. The clean energy industry is really pioneering, and the work Marcus and his colleagues are doing to bring new investments into the state.
Wonderful. And we'll talk a little bit more when we come back after this break. Thank you.